It's time for our weekly gathering to talk about all things menopause. You know who I am, Menopause Barbie, your Menopause Taylor, and I know who a lot of you are. I also know that nobody else is teaching you all the things you need to understand in order to manage your menopause your way successfully. So that's what my channel is all about. I have no management style to push on you, and I have no product to sell you. I actually don't care what you do to manage your menopause. What I care about is making sure you know the facts and have the tools to succeed. One of the things you need is an understanding of the differences between the dietary supplement industry and the pharmaceutical drug industry, and between the products themselves. Now, you're probably scoffing at how elementary that sounds, but there's more to it than most people realize. Personally, I think there's a lot of value in both, but the most critical thing between the two is their differences. Knowing their differences helps shape your expectations in advance, and shaping your expectations in advance avoids feelings of failure in accomplishing your menopausal goals. So this is video 191. It's part of our unit on the problems, principles, and powers of menopause management, and it's addressing one of the principles of menopause management. One of the principles pertains to the differences between these categories of options. And since most women compare dietary supplements and pharmaceutical drugs, I thought it would be helpful to give you a tutorial on just that, their comparisons. If you're for or against either dietary supplements or pharmaceutical drugs, it will do you a world of good to watch this video. It's purely factual. I don't recommend one over the other. If you have my book, either edition, first or second edition, this material is in chapter 6, but it's organized very differently and it's not nearly as detailed as it is in this video. So let's address the two item by item to see how they compare. And at the end, I'll sum it up with a chart. As usual, I love my charts. I chart everything. Whenever I'm a student, I'm the chart queen. I love narrowing the material down and putting it on one sheet of paper. So we'll organize the material into the following categories: purpose, claims, regulation, approval, research, safety and effectiveness, and quality and consistency. We'll start with purpose. Now this is really important. The very reason you take either a dietary supplement or a pharmaceutical drug is to serve a purpose. So you need to know which each is capable of in terms of results. The purpose of a pharmaceutical drug, any pharmaceutical drug, is to diagnose, cure, mitigate, treat, or prevent disease. So right there, you can see that pharmaceutical drugs fall into the realm of disease. In video 125, I contrasted health care with disease care. And the main message was that our health care system is really a disease care system. It's the system you need to use when you're sick. In that video, I told you that doctors are repairmen. We learn how to fix you when you're broken in some way. And we fix you by utilizing pharmaceutical drugs and surgical procedures. So think of pharmaceutical drugs as the tools doctors use to keep you from getting sicker or more broken than you already are. But you only take pharmaceutical drugs if you're already sick or broken enough to need them. You only take a statin drug to prevent a heart attack if you're already at high risk for a heart attack. You're partially broken. The statin drugs help prevent you from becoming more broken. Notice also that pharmaceutical drugs have a range of purposes from prevention to cure and everything in between. And that's because different people are broken to different degrees. The drug can only fix so much, though. So the bottom line on the purpose of pharmaceutical drugs is that they belong in the realm of disease. If you're well, you don't need pharmaceutical drugs. Now, let's contrast that with a dietary supplement. First, let me qualify that dietary supplements include all of the following: vitamins, minerals, amino acids, enzymes, herbs, and products containing a dietary ingredient or something your body makes itself. The purpose of a dietary supplement is to supplement your diet. So right there, you see a great big distinction. Dietary supplements fall into the realm of wellness. Unlike pharmaceutical drugs, which are part of the disease care industry, dietary supplements are part of the health care industry. You take them when you're healthy. They are designed to keep you healthy. They are not intended to diagnose, cure, mitigate, treat, or prevent disease. They have nothing at all to do with disease. They are not designed to fix you once you're broken. So as long as you use pharmaceutical drugs to fix your disease when you're broken, and you use dietary supplements to keep you healthy when you're not broken, you'll find that they are both very good at fulfilling their purpose. The problems arise when people try to use the wrong agent for the wrong purpose. If you need a pharmaceutical drug to cure a disease, and you take a dietary supplement instead, you'll be disappointed and eventually you'll be more broken. These are not either or options for most situations. However, we live in a world in which people love to take sides. And these two categories of options belong on opposite sides of the medical spectrum. The medical spectrum has alternative and complementary medicine on one end and traditional or allopathic medicine on the other end. I call them the two camps of medicine. What makes people think they have to belong to one or another, I don't know. So the biggest mistake people make is that they choose a camp as if it's some form of loyalty to a country. Unfortunately, if you choose a camp or category and refuse to use anything that is not within that category, you can get into a lot of trouble. It's like the difference between needing to get your teeth cleaned versus needing to get a cavity filled. One does not suffice for the other. Cleaning your teeth will not take care of the cavity, and filling the cavity will not clean your teeth. In the case of the cleaning, your teeth are not broken. You're just maintaining them in their healthy state. But in the case of the cavity, your tooth is broken and you have to fix it. So if you hate doctors, pharmaceutical drugs, and the drug industry, and therefore use dietary supplements for your disease instead of drugs, they will not serve your purpose well. Likewise, if you're healthy and just want to maintain your health, taking a pharmaceutical drug is overkill. So the goal is to use the product that serves the purpose you seek. And that brings us to our next topic. You can see these differences in purposes if you look at the claims associated with the two classes of products. A claim is the purpose that is stated on the product. Pharmaceutical drugs state claims designating what the drug is specifically capable of accomplishing: diagnosing, curing, mitigating, which means reducing, treating, or preventing a disease. It's a promise that it can accomplish these goals. And the claim specifically designates the disease for which the drug is intended. There's nothing vague about why someone should use a drug. The claims on dietary supplements are completely different. In fact, dietary supplements are required to have a written disclaimer on them. And it says the exact opposite of what the claims on pharmaceutical drugs say. After each claim made on a dietary supplement, it says, in quotes, This statement has not been evaluated by the US FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Here it is on this product in the rectangular box. It's always there, usually in very tiny print. Most of the time, you need a magnifying glass to read it, but that's exactly what it says. This is entirely in keeping with the fact that dietary supplements are for purposes of maintaining your health, not treating your disease. So dietary supplements cannot use the word disease in their claims. They can only make claims about keeping you healthy if you're already healthy. So the bottom line is that dietary supplements cannot help you if you have any disease, but they can keep you healthy if you do not have any disease. Our next category is regulation. Regulation refers to the laws, rules, standards, and oversight for the industry. Regulation determines how precise the product has to be for its intended purpose. It designates the authoritative bodies which oversee the industry to ensure that there is no shenanigans. It refers to who polices the industry to ensure that the public is not harmed. We're all old enough to have witnessed lack of regulation in various industries, such as the financial sector, the tobacco companies, and others. When regulatory standards are not strict enough, people suffer. When there is room for rule bending, people suffer. When an industry polices itself instead of having to answer to a higher body, people suffer. This is just a matter of conducting business in a manner that protects consumers. In every country, there is a governing body that oversees the companies that make pharmaceutical drugs. In the US, it's called the Food and Drug Administration, FDA. In Europe, it's called the European Medicines Agency, EMA. In Thailand, it's called the Thailand Food and Drug Administration, TFDA. In South Africa, it's the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, SAHPRA. All of these agencies are separate from the pharmaceutical drug industry itself. They are authorities over the industry, such that the drug companies have to meet the standards designated by the governing authority. Have you ever noticed how the standards we set for ourselves tend to be lower and easier than those set by a governing body, be it a teacher, a boss, or a parent? It's just part of human nature to make things easy on ourselves when we can. So all these governing bodies require that drugs pass certain well-defined qualifications before they can be marketed to the public. So with the pharmaceutical drugs, that oversight is securely in place. The result is uniformity. All drugs from all pharmaceutical companies have to measure up in order to market their products. With dietary supplements, regulation is different. There is no governing body that is separate from the dietary supplement industry itself. Instead, the dietary supplement industry polices itself. In other words, it doesn't have to answer to anyone at a higher level outside the industry. There isn't a governing body within the industry. Instead, regulation of dietary supplements is by the manufacturer of the dietary supplements themselves. So the person making the dietary supplements sets his or her own standards. Each manufacturer is different, so much so that the mere concept of adhering to a standard becomes arbitrary. And the result is that there is no uniformity. The standard for one manufacturer of glucosamine might be to have 50% of active ingredient in each tablet. The standard for another may be to have 25%, and for yet another There may be no consistency at all from batch to batch or tablet to tablet. By and large, this ends up being the most significant difference between pharmaceutical drugs and dietary supplements. And that's because with pharmaceutical drugs, you know what you're getting. With dietary supplements, you don't. Okay, so now you have two standards for these industries. And the next question is, what does it take to get approval of a product by each industry? Approval is the green light to market the product. Approval is the license to sell. So it amounts to passing a test in order to be able to make the drug available by prescription or to put a product on the store shelf. As you might imagine, the approval process for pharmaceutical drugs is long, arduous, and expensive. Every single pharmaceutical drug that is available to you requires 12 years, over $350 million, and 3 phases of clinical trials in order to get approval. Can you imagine? That's a difficult accomplishment for anyone. So pharmaceutical drugs are researched to death before they're even available to you. That's why they're so expensive. It requires a big, wealthy drug company to even be able to accomplish such a feat. Well, dietary supplement manufacturers are not big, wealthy drug companies. They are usually individuals who aren't even in the medical industry. They can't afford to do research, so they don't. There's no requirement that they conduct any trials. And hey, if you were in the business to make money and there was no oversight or policing of the industry, would you spend the money to do the research if you didn't have to? Probably not. That's why dietary supplements aren't very expensive. And it's why you can buy them over the counter without any guidance. They have the same approval standards as foods. And you buy food without any help. For dietary supplements, the only requirement for approval is that the manufacturer follow something called current good manufacturing practices. But the actual definition of current good manufacturing practices is vague at best. Mostly, current good manufacturing practices limit the number and kind of contaminants that may adulterate a finished batch of a dietary supplement. There is no requirement for purity, consistency, or veracity of ingredients. Because there is no oversight of the industry, there are constant attempts to enforce higher standards, but the manufacturers repeatedly shoot them down by claiming discrimination. So when it comes to approval, you have opposite ends of a spectrum. Pharmaceutical drugs undergo an ultra-strict and intense approval process, whereas dietary supplements undergo hardly any approval process. Wouldn't it be nice if there was something in between? Next, and closely related to approval, is research. Research encompasses the advanced testing for pitfalls, side effects, and unforeseen consequences of using the product. Research is what gives you forewarning about the possible ramifications of using the product. And as I just stated, there's loads of research on pharmaceutical drugs. By the time you get your hands on any pharmaceutical drugs, it has been put through so much research that we know all the possible quirks associated with it. That's why you get this great big, thick package insert that scares you to death with every pharmaceutical drugs. It tells you everything that could transpire as a result of using the drug, no matter how unlikely. I mean, look at this thing. It's like a newspaper. It leaves no stone unturned. The attitude is, tell the customer everything. It's a form of legal protection. But you read this as if everything listed will happen to you. So rather than giving you statistics or allaying your fears a bit, this mortifies you. The intention is to be extra safe and informative, but most people interpret this information to imply that the drug itself is unsafe. And again, with dietary supplements, the exact opposite is true. Instead of too much research, there's none at all. So you get no information whatsoever about possible side effects. There's no requirement that the manufacturer tell you about them, so they don't. And there's no literature accompanying the product. Now, what that really means is that it hasn't been tested. But most consumers assume that it's because there are no risks. Don't be fooled. There are risks with everything. The question is, do you want to know what they are beforehand or not? Next on our list is safety and effectiveness. Now, you already know that pharmaceutical drugs are tested for safety and effectiveness. And that's what all the approval and research are for. And the result of all that time-consuming, costly approval and research is that pharmaceutical drugs are considered unsafe until they are proven safe. So by the time a pharmaceutical drug becomes available for use, it has gone through testing that proved its safety and effectiveness for its intended purpose. In other words, safety must be proven before marketing the product. And once again, it's just the opposite with dietary supplements. Because there is no approval process or research, there's no way to prove that the product is safe or effective before it hits the market. There's no way to know. So with dietary supplements, the product is considered safe until it's proven unsafe. It has to cause harm before any authorities can intervene. The problem with proving a dietary supplement unsafe, though, is that the claims made for the products are so vague that it's difficult to implicate them. Do you see how circular this is? If you don't claim any purpose other than maintaining health, and you have no regulation, and there is no approval process, and there's no research, it's difficult to prove that the product caused harm. And finally, we have quality and consistency. Quality is how well the product performs its intended purpose. Consistency is how closely identical products with the same name perform that same purpose. Consistency pertains to individual batches of a product, individual bottles of a product, or individual tablets of a product. In other words, does each batch, bottle, or tablet contain exactly the same ingredients in exactly the same quantities? With pharmaceutical drugs, all that regulation, approval, and research demands that the product be manufactured specifically to provide absolute quality and consistency. Every single tablet is capable of producing the very same result as every other tablet of that same drug. There is no variability. They are essentially clones of one another. Likewise, there is no way a pharmaceutical tablet labeled as 1 milligram only contains 0.75 milligrams of the drug. You can count on consistent, predictable dosage every time you get a prescription of the drug. Quality and consistency are guaranteed. Not so with dietary supplements. I mean, just think about it. These are products produced by a single individual in a setting with no oversight and no requirement for testing. So this manufacturer is going to get the raw product from somewhere, mix it with whatever fillers or other ingredients he chooses, and put it out on the market. It may be contaminated. It may not have the same milligram dosage as what's written on the label. There may be all sorts of flaws in it. But then, if you're only using it to maintain your already good health, does that really matter? Remember, dietary supplements follow the standards for foods, not drugs. So is your food guaranteed for quality and consistency? Or are there all sorts of preservatives, artificial colors, chemicals, and fillers in food? Surely you choose the latter. So there are no guarantees for dietary supplements. And if you're using them merely to supplement your diet, then you're safe with them, just as you are with your food. So you have two different industries that fall into two different camps of medicine. Pharmaceutical drugs fall into the traditional medical camp that constitutes the disease care industry, And dietary supplements fall into the alternative camp that constitutes the healthcare or wellness industry. If you look at it that way, the differences are not so striking. But if you consider dietary supplements alongside drugs for treating disease, it's shocking. I think it's important to understand the principal differences between these two industries for managing your menopause. If you use them both for their intended purposes rather than seeing them as equal options for the same purposes, you'll succeed. Now, a word of warning. Do not choose a camp and then confine yourself to only what's in that camp. It's odd how these days people focus on the means rather than the end. If you already have a symptom or disease, or you want to avoid a symptom or disease, find out which products are capable of accomplishing your goal. Do not choose a product first and then expect it to accomplish your goal just because you want it to. Here's an analogy. If you need a hysterectomy, it is a huge mistake to decide that you want robotic surgery or laparoscopic surgery or a vaginal hysterectomy instead of an abdominal hysterectomy. The hysterectomy is the procedure. All the other things I mentioned are the different approaches or ways of accomplishing that procedure. They are the tools or the instruments from which a surgeon can perform the procedure. But it is not your job to choose the instruments. What you want is the safest possible procedure, and you are not qualified to choose the instruments with which to perform it. Patients get themselves into all kinds of trouble by deciding that they want robotic surgery or laparoscopic surgery or whatever. That's like choosing a utensil before choosing your food. It's like saying, I only want to eat what I can eat with a spoon. The robot or the laparoscope or whatever is simply a tool that the surgeon uses to perform the procedure. Let the surgeon choose the tools, for heaven's sakes. You want a successful, safe procedure. And it is a huge mistake to ask a surgeon to perform a procedure with tools that are not of his or her choosing. It's as if the decisions about such things have been put in the wrong hands. So when it comes to the two camps, know your goals first and choose the category second. If you do it the other way around, you will miss the boat on accomplishing your goals. Okay, I promised you a chart summarizing this material, so here it is. You can find it in the link just below the screen you're watching, or you can go to my website, which is menopausetailor.me. Okay, that's all, folks. If you need a consultation for any reason, schedule it at menopausetailor.me. If you want to follow me, go to Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. If you want to subscribe, subscribe. And next week, I'll address the hot topic of the differences and similarities between bioidentical hormones, compounded hormones, custom hormones, and pharmaceutical hormones. I find that so many women have this information all wrong, and it really works against them in getting what they want for managing their menopause. I can make it so much easier for you. Until then, bye!